All right. All right, we went into chapter 16 this past Sunday, but I do actually want to go back to chapter 15, and I want to look a little more closely at the parables. We did the parable of the prodigal son a little bit in my message 2 weeks ago on Sunday, but I just want to walk back through this chapter again. It's an important chapter. The idea of the lost and going after the lost. I mean, just the fact that Luke really it's sort of a centerpiece. I mean, it's not exactly in between chapter 9 and chapter 19, but it's pretty close. And this is if you're looking for sort of one of the main things that Luke is going to spend time on, it is this chapter. So what's interesting as we said on that Sunday, there's three stories of lost things that are encapsulated in this chapter. So chapter 15, verse 1, it says, "Now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to him. The Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling, saying, 'This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them.'" And it's in that is the context. That is the context that these religious officials, they are complaining that Jesus is spending time with these people, and he not only responds with a story, he responds with three stories to sort of make sure that you understand what he's doing, and in the context of discipleship, what we should be doing as well. So he starts off verse 3. So he told them this parable. "Which of you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? When he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders and rejoices. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbors, saying to them, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost.' Just so, I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over the 99 righteous persons who need no repentance." A couple of things about this. This is a favorite metaphor in the Bible. I mean, God is often referred to as the shepherd. Obviously, the most famous psalm is Psalm 23, the Good Shepherd. We read that frequently. And the image of the lost sheep is often a favorite reference to Israel. So when Jesus goes after this word picture, it would have been a familiar word picture. I mean, this would have struck a certain chord for those that are listening. A couple of things. One, when Jesus says this, he is speaking sort of in this reversal language, because this doesn't make sense. This does not make sense. If you have 100 lost sheep, or if you have 100 sheep and you lose one of them, kind of logically you say, no, I can't leave the 99 to go get the one. Okay? You kind of like tough luck on the sheep. I mean, you just sort of lost out. I mean, if I'm one shepherd, I can't risk leaving these 99 to go get the one. But Jesus makes it sound like, he says this, it's like, of course, everybody knows that they would do this. And everybody's sort of looking around going, no, we wouldn't necessarily do that. Now, when you change the metaphor, if you had, in my case, if you have 5 kids, you lose one. I mean, you gotta go find the one. I do remember one time we were in Reno, and this was probably 2010, 2011. So Camden, who is now serving overseas, we went to Blockbuster. Okay, you remember Blockbuster? You go rent movies. Okay, no one has to do this anymore. You can just watch them on your phone. You can watch them on your brand new phone. But we went to Blockbuster, and that was sort of the big thing. We would rent a movie for us to watch, and then each of the kids got to rent, like it was like $1. You get the little Disney movies for $1, something like that. And at the time, we drove a very big conversion van, okay, because we had 5 kids, and it was just a big gaggle of them all the time. And so, get the movies, we check out, and this Blockbuster was probably 2 miles from our house, so it was not very far. So we get everybody back in the van, we get home, and then I get a call on my cell phone from Blockbuster. And I saw it on my caller ID, Blockbuster calls. And so I pick up the phone, and they say, David Anderson? It's like, yeah. And I saw, did I leave my card there? Did I leave one of the movies there? He goes, do you have a son named Camden? I looked around real quick. I was like, I do. Well, he's here. He's here. He was in the back of the store. It's like, oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. So my lowest point as a parent. So I quickly drove back. Now I could have just said, listen, I got 4 kids. So listen. I mean, I kept 80%. I kept 80% of my children that day. But no, we went back and got him. So I try very hard to forget that story. He tries very hard to always remind me of that story. And we started looking at it, and I always ask that question: is everybody here? And they all said yes. So if you weren't here, you should have spoke up. That's my thought. Okay. What's interesting too is that the whole picture. We have this picture. If you've seen paintings of the Good Shepherd, sometimes you'll see pictures of Jesus as the Good Shepherd, or you just see a picture of a shepherd. There's always this beautiful pastoral scene where we have a picture here of the sheep, and it's always so calm. They're just these calm, beautiful animals. Okay, I'm going to challenge any of you to go out and pick up a sheep and put it on your shoulders and try to walk any amount of distance with this. This sheep is not saying, "Oh, I'm so glad you found me. Let me just ride home peacefully," and all of that. No, this animal is kicking and yelping and all of that. This sheep is convinced. The reason it went off is because it was convinced that it was doing what it wanted to do. Okay? And you come get that sheep, put it on your shoulders, that is not in the sheep's plan. They're just trying their hardest. And so the paintings, I've seen little porcelain statues of Jesus holding the sheep, and it's all just cute. No, you would just have to imagine this even a baby sheep, a significant sized dog, you're putting that on your shoulders, and depending on whether it has been shorn or not, you could have this big fluffy furry thing that is you're just trying to carry this thing around. Now, a shepherd, this is probably something that they do all the time, all of that, but just that whole picture, the sheep does not want to come back. It does not want to come back. It is not relieved. It is just fighting to stay where it's going. Now he comes home and there's this at least in our minds, this is an overreaction. We're going to see a similar thing in the next story as well. Comes home, rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost. Okay, everybody is sort of celebrating, and that is a good thing. Most people, though, would probably have 2 different reactions. One, the first reaction is, well, it's kind of the sheep's fault. You're lucky the sheep just didn't do its own thing. The other thing might be, well, you're kind of the shepherd that lost the sheep, and so why are we coming to this party? Because you lost your sheep and found it. So, but the owner's like, you need to celebrate. And it is interesting for us, how much do we truly celebrate when people's lives turn around? When we see someone's life turn around, this parable presents like you should be overjoyed. You should be overjoyed. Okay? And I would say most of my life, I've seen, in this church and other places. I remember more from the church I grew up in. There would be times where this person would come forward. They would come forward, they want to join the church, or they would have a conversion, they've decided to accept Jesus and all that. And it would be a great moment. But if you knew that person, if you had Johnny, the local troublemaker, comes into church and he comes forward and he wants to recommit his life and all that kind of stuff, there will be a certain sense of, okay, we'll see how long this lasts. Okay, yeah, we'll give Johnny 3 or 4 weeks. He's not. Listen, I know Johnny. I'm not gonna say anything. I know Johnny. I know what he is and what he does, and there's not really that sense of we're overjoyed. Like, we are just so glad. We're just so happy. And so Jesus makes it, he sort of puts this in a way that it should speak to you. Like, you should be overjoyed. Absolutely. Like, of course, what shepherd wouldn't leave and go find it? And if you got invited to the lost sheep party, you should say, yes, absolutely. I should come to that. The next one, very interesting, verse 8 says, or what woman having 10 silver coins, if she loses one of them, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it. When she has found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I had lost. Just so I tell you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. What's interesting, now I do resonate with this. I lose my stuff all the time, okay? Half the time my house gets clean in the pursuit of the things that I've lost, okay? And so I'll lose this, but then you start going into this project. You're like, oh, well, I know it's in one of my pockets. So that's how my clothes get put away. Is I'll put away my stuff as I realize, it's not in this pocket. It's not in this pocket. So I recognize this. When there are times where if I find my keys or if I find something, I do want to call people. I'm like, oh my goodness, you guys will not believe where I found my stuff. We also we have two wonderful cats that and I designed them to be barn cats, but they have the winter had other plans. But these cats, they think they're helping, but they will move things. They will take things from this spot and they will move them to this spot. So the other day we were building a little piece of furniture in Jessica's room, and it's one of those things that comes with the little hex screw thing, and we were right in the middle of it, and Misty says, where's the thing? We looked all around, and it was down at the bottom of the stairs, because the cat had thought, I'm going to help you, and brought it all the way down the bottom of the stairs. So it's a fabulous thing. We were just celebrating that we got it fixed.
My cleaning ladies do that to me all the time. It's like an Easter egg hunt after they go home. I wanted to say one thing about these 10 coins,
Sure.
and I was talking to Carol earlier.
Mm-hmm.
It's, as I understand it, married women in that day wore a silver thing around their head with 10 coins.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like having a wedding ring.
Mm-hmm.
So if you lost the coin out of that bunch of silver coins, it was a very big loss.
Oh, it was huge. I mean, this was a valuable thing. This was certainly again, I don't know how many people went to lost coin parties in the first century. So if you get that invitation in the mail, like, oh, okay, Judy lost her coin, we're going to go to her party and celebrate this. What Jesus is saying, it's sort of hyperbole, it's sort of an overstatement. It's simply say, hey, this is a big deal. This may not seem like a big deal, and so he's in the context again. He's talking to Pharisees, and why are you hanging out with these bad people? The Pharisees have closed the book on certain folks. They've just closed the book on them, and we do this as well. We just sort of close the book. Well, I'm not going to talk to them because they're this, or I'm not going to talk to them because of that. And we don't celebrate that. We don't celebrate those stories of life change. This should be the thing. You should be, I'm not saying you should start throwing lost coin parties, but you should be in the business saying, this is the thing that you celebrate. This is what you celebrate. In our church, I mean, there's certain things that we celebrate. We celebrate things like attendance. We celebrate things like meeting our budget goals and other programs are doing well. We should really be saying, like, hey, who have we seen that has converted? Who have we seen that has changed their life? Who have we seen that has come to God? And that should be the thing that we celebrate. In every leadership book that I read, one of the things they'll talk through your vision statement or your purpose statement or things like that. But one of the things that they emphasize over and over and over again is this idea: you are what you celebrate. You are what you celebrate. Okay, so if you celebrate getting wealthy, okay, if that's what we sort of in our culture can kind of celebrate. If you celebrate getting wealthy, if you celebrate your rewards, whatever, that's what you are. I mean, it's just that's the thing that's important. If you celebrate beauty, that's what's important to you. These people are beautiful. These people are not beautiful. For us, if you celebrate whatever you sort of celebrate, that's what you are. Well, we made our budget, or we started these programs, things like that. So if like I'm right now, we are celebrating. Recently, we've had some incredible numbers and results of folks who've gone over to Trinity to help with their food program, and that's awesome. Those are the things that we should celebrate. We're feeding people. We're seeing people's lives changed through that program. But again, you are what you celebrate. And so what Jesus is basically saying in both these stories, what is it that you celebrate? What is it you celebrate? Are you busy putting people in boxes or saying, well, hey, tough luck for them. They were the ones that got lost. I had nothing to do with that. That was their choice. They went off and did that. Or are you celebrating when things are found? So, all right. I want to go into the prodigal son for a little bit. And as we said in our message 2 weeks ago, what is striking about the prodigal? There's a number of things. I'm going to try to look at it from a couple of different angles. One of the things that is going to be amazing at the end is you have the story of the lost sheep, and the shepherd goes out to look for it, the lost coin, and the woman goes to look for it. You have the story of the lost son, and no one goes to look for it. Okay? So just sort of keep that in mind as we go through. Then Jesus said, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me. Okay? Now, as we have said numerous times, this is so insulting. This is, you're basically asking for your inheritance before the person dies. Okay? You're just like, Dad, I can't wait for you to pass on, because I really need this money. And I really can't wait. I know you got a couple more years left, but I need this inheritance now. Okay? At this point, the story should have been over. At this point, the dad should have said, "Get out of here. Go to your room. Go clean your room." Okay? But he doesn't. What's interesting is he gives it to him. He splits up. He divides the property between them. Now, in this culture, the term is called primogenitor, which basically means that the oldest son gets the lion's share. It would not be a 50-50. You're probably looking at a 70-30, or more specifically, the property, the house, and the livestock, all of that kind of stuff, depending if they were in farming or whatnot, that would all go to the older son. Okay, the younger son, his inheritance would not really be, it would be a share of something. He would not get any of the land. He would not get any of the property. He would get a monetary sum. It would be very, very much divided that way. Now, what comes with that, there would come responsibility. It was not just, oh, you're the oldest son, so you just get it all. The responsibility will come, and we'll see that a little bit later. But the youngest son would get a certain amount of money. And this would have still been a sizable amount of money, but it would not have been the idea for the land going to the oldest son. It was part of his job to keep the family together, for him to keep the estate together. It was not necessarily just this culture of, oh, we have $500,000 in the bank, and I'm going to give you 300, and the other son's going to get. No, it really wasn't like that. Your wealth was the land. I mean, your wealth, I'm not going to sell you my land. I'm just going to, this is our land. I'm going to give you this. And so it was sort of expected that oldest son, he would have a family, and that land would be passed on to him. And so that's sort of the scenario. So when this younger son probably would have left anyways. Once he got the money, if he would have waited till dad passed away, whatnot, very rarely would you see the two sons living together. It would usually be the younger son who would go off. He would go find a trade. He would go find something else. He would not be the landowner. He would take his share. Wisely, you would take your share of the inheritance. You would go try to start your own estate, okay? And you would sort of try to figure it out. You kind of knew as you were growing up, I'm not going to stay here. I'm not getting the land, anything like that. So a few days later, the young son gathered all that he had. He traveled to a distant country, and there he squandered his property in dissolute living. Okay, so off camera, we were talking about going to Vegas and going to Reno. This is what the young man did. He went out to Vegas. I just hear that Elvis Presley, Viva Las Vegas in my head as he just, oh man, I'm gonna have a great time. And there are probably plenty of people who were very excited to see him, just like the casino. They were sending him the casino card. Hey, you should come back. Spend a little today. We'll have you come back tomorrow. And he is having a great time. And he just squanders it. The story does not make it pretty. It does not cover up for it. He goes and he wastes his money. Dissolute living. Verse 14, when he had spent everything, okay, not most of it. He spent it all. He spent it all. So you just got to imagine this guy waking up, and maybe he's wearing the Elvis costume or something. He's in a hotel room, and he's looking around, can't figure out what's happened, and where am I? Where's all my stuff? And someone comes in and says, you're out of money. You need to get out. Get out of here. So he's just wasted it. He goes to, it says a severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. Oh my goodness. This is bad. Now, as a Jewish listener, okay, there's one thing to feed animals. There's another thing to feed pigs, okay? Pigs were not kosher. They're still not kosher. But this is the lowest of the low. You're broke. You spent all your father's money. You insulted your father on your way out. You've wasted it all. Now you have nothing. Now you have to go work for a pig farmer. This is as low as it possibly gets. Okay? So it would be like Baker Mayfield getting traded to Detroit. Okay? Just the lowest. There's very few things. And that's actually been a discussion. So I think he might be going to Pittsburgh, though, too. I don't know if that's low or high or whatnot. It's a great insult. So he is just the lowest of the low. Says he would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. So he's got this feed bag. Okay, if any of you've had to do farm work and you got to go feed the pigs, first of all, the pig's diet's not very complicated, and it's certainly you're feeding horses something way different than you're feeding the pigs. But he's got this like satchel, and he's throwing these like I always imagine like dried peas. You ever get a bag of dried peas and you sort of open those up before you put them in the split pea soup will be good once it's done. But you look at these they're just dried things. And he's throwing them, and the text says that at some point he has this handful of these pods, And he's looking at these pots. He's feeding the pigs. He's looking at pig food. And he is just like, man. Okay? That's how low he's gotten. He's actually holding pig food in his hands, and I could eat this. I could completely
Do you know
eat
they're
this.
undigestible to man?
Oh, sure. No, but listen, if you're hungry, it's amazing. It's amazing what you will look for when you're hungry. And it's so all my boys wrestle. I wrestled in high school, and I remember this after my senior season was over, and they've all sort of gone through this. When you get to the point where you don't have to make weight anymore. Okay? I remember when I was in high school, like most guys in high school, you're thinking about girls, you're thinking about cars, you're thinking about kind of stuff like that. I would sit and just sit in the wrestling room, and I would fantasize about food. Okay? I would have these wild fantasies where I'm pushing this cart through the supermarket and I'm just putting everything in. Okay? So other guys thinking about, oh, I could date this beautiful girl, or I could go do that. No, I was thinking about food. I was thinking about all the Debbie, like how many little Debbie cakes could you put into one thing? How many bags of chips could you put into one thing? And all of my sons have sort of told me, like, yeah, there's a plan. So once you have your last weigh-in, there's a plan for all of this. And like, well, first we're going to go to breakfast here, then we're going to go to lunch here, and so we all think. So that is a universal thing. I always thought I was odd, but everyone goes through that. But it was just like, man, I can eat this stuff. And I knew it. That I was also thinking, like, man, I have eaten healthy all this time, and like, no, I don't care. I'm gonna eat whatever. I'm gonna eat as much pizza as I possibly can put in my face. But then it says, but when he came to himself, that's an important phrase. When he came to himself, when he turned around. I mean, he had a change of heart, a change of mind. It's almost the same word as repentance. Okay? When he came to himself. Every one of us have had those moments where you come to yourself. Okay? You've been following yourself for a long time, and yourself has gotten yourself into trouble, okay? But there is a point where you come to yourself and you realize, you know what? This is dumb. Why am I doing this? Why am I making this choice? And you've been making this choice for a long time, okay? I've been in this relationship for a long time, or I've been spending my money this way for a long time, or I've had this habit for a long time. And I hear this story all the time. People say, there's a great little phrase. I decided. I just decided. Okay? And you'll hear people, they'll say, you know what? I was doing this stuff. I was in this bad place. And then you know what? Just one day I just decided. Okay? It wasn't like angels came down or anything, or it wasn't like the earthquake happened or anything like that. They just say this one little phrase. You know what? I just got to this point. And I just decided I wasn't gonna argue with her anymore, or I wasn't gonna argue with him anymore. Or I just wasn't gonna work there anymore. I just wasn't gonna do this. I was not gonna take that from the boss anymore. I wasn't going to keep doing this to my body. I was just not gonna keep there were these people that I hung around, and you know what? I just decided they weren't good for me. These folks were just not good. I just decided. That is a very powerful idea. Just a very powerful idea. You know, you didn't have to have God come and speak to you or anything like that. I just decided. I've been in crazy town for too long, and no matter what it is, I decided I'm not doing this. I decided I'm not making that phone call. I decided I'm not answering that phone call. I decide whatever it is. I just decided, and that's what is happening here. Is he came to himself. He came to himself. There is reality. You know, there's sin's very complicated because there's this idea, well, I'm doing what I want to do. But there is a part of you that knows you shouldn't be doing this. There's another deeper part of you that knows this isn't good for you. Okay? And you always sort of I always remember watching the Bugs Bunny cartoons when I was a kid, and there would be like the Bugs Bunny in the angel outfit and the little Bugs Bunny in the devil outfit. They're both sitting there on your shoulder, and they're like, they're constantly battling. They're constantly chattering in your ear. And it's not like when you come to yourself, there is a part of it. I do want to be different. I do want to be close to God. I do want to be in relationship with God. And it's not like this foreign idea. It's like you've been telling yourself that for a long time. And there was probably a voice that was talking to this prodigal son for a long time. It's like, hey, this is not a good plan. You may be mad at your brother. Maybe you're mad at your dad. We have no context for this. It's just a made-up story, but we don't know. We don't know. Maybe the brother was mean to him for years and years, and he was like, I can't stand anymore. I got to get out of here. Okay? We don't know the context for all of that. But there is usually something that is telling you, and you're sort of competing. Now, the other side of this is you were present for all of your bad decisions. Okay? You were present. You were on site for every bad choice you ever made. And every bad choice, every bad decision you've ever made, guess who was the spokesperson for all of your bad choices? You were. You were the salesperson that talked you into every single bad decision. You were it. I talked myself. Every bad choice I ever made, I was there talking myself into that decision. So there is sort of this interesting idea. There was sort of a battle, and he finally comes to himself. And he thought he was a genius. He thought, look, I'm going to take my dad's money. I'm moving to Vegas. I'm going to live high on the hog. No, he's out feeding the pigs. Okay. And then he finds, no, come to yourself. This was a bad thing. This is a bad thing. And he realized it. He says he came to himself and said, how many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare? But here I am dying of hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands. So he went off and went to his father. Okay? And what I think is amazing about this parable is this is very much human nature. I rehearse what I'm going to say. Okay? If you're ever going into a meeting or a difficult situation, I do this with my wife all the time. It never works. Okay, so I always think, I know, I'm gonna say this. I always have the plan. Okay, so and in my mind, she always has the same response. You're so right. You're a genius, and that is never the answer that I get. But I always think it out. We do this as guys. Guys, we think this out. Well, I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna tell her this. She's gonna think that's some genius. She's gonna think I'm all right. It never works. But we think it out. Like when we go in this situation, when I call this person, when I sit down with this person, when I go into this meeting. So and he thinks it out. He's got his speech. He's got his speech. As soon as I go see my dad, this is exactly what I'm gonna say. So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. Now, this is a huge turning point in the story. This is not the reaction that should have happened. Okay? The reaction that we kind of get, or we would think, is there was a behavior that there should have been some punishment. There should have been some, what are you doing here? I thought you were off doing your plan. We love this story. But at this point, this is where the shock comes in. He's filled with compassion. There is an old tradition that really what should have happened when you had a son that did something like this, when you had a family member that did something like this, you would take the son to the gate of the city, and there was a very visual thing you would do. You would take a pot. You would take a pot, and you would throw down the pot. You would break it. Okay? And there's allusions to this. You'll see this imagery in the Old Testament. Sometimes you're reading the prophets, and you'll see this idea of the broken pot, things like that. Israel many times has been the broken pot. But he would throw down this pot, and you would basically say to everybody, look here, son. And it's probably the last time I call you son. Look here. And I'm doing it in front of everybody. Our relationship is this pot. It is broken. And you've broken it. And so do not come back. This is your choice. Whatever. There were many stories of folks who became tax collectors, that their family would do that to them. Like, I can't believe you're going to go work for them. Mom, I'm going to make a lot of money. It doesn't matter. You're going to take money from your Jewish friends. You're going to take money from other citizens. And they would do something like this. Don't come home. Don't write. Don't come home at Thanksgiving. No. And so you would take this pot, you would throw it down and say, no, we're broken. We're broken. And by all rights, this is what should have happened. Yes, I will let you. If you want to be my servant, that's fine. Go out here, whatever. But you're no longer my son. And that would be what would happen. So when we see this happening here, it's shocking. It is a shocking thing to the first century reader. We love it. We love the story. We love the story of the son coming home. The dad has compassion on him and all that. But he says he was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him. Now, this would have been very embarrassing. Okay, the dad would have had these long robes on. Okay? The clothing in that day, we've seen, and we see it in even these pictures. You would have sort of an outer sort of cloak kind of thing, but you would have this long robe. What you'd have to do in order to run, if any of you have ever tried to run in a wedding dress, okay? Has anybody ever tried to run in a very long gown, okay? Speaking to the ladies here, hopefully none of the guys, okay? But you can't. What you have to do with the dress, if you were to dare to run, okay, is you have to hike up the dress a little bit in order to run. So for this dad to do this, he has to hike up this robe and go out to run. This would have been embarrassing. I mean, this would have been you would not see this happen. You would just not see this happen. So the fact that the story could have been just as powerful as the dad waits for him on the porch, the son comes and gives a speech, and dad still hugs him, whatever, sort of a Hallmark moment. But no, dad runs out. He runs out. He has hiked up his skirt in a very embarrassing manner, put his arms around him, and kissed him. Okay? All this was extremely, extremely powerful and over the top. Then the son said to him, Father, and he starts his speech. He's like, this is the speech I worked on. He probably told himself this speech hundreds of times as he's walking from this far-off country. We have no idea how he gets home. We have no idea how long it takes him to get home. But this is all he's thought about. I'm going to give this speech as soon as I get a chance to. So, Father, I've sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his slaves, quickly bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive. He was lost and is found. And they began to celebrate. This is fabulous. This would have been Thanksgiving. Okay, it's May, but listen, we're gonna have Thanksgiving. Go get the big turkey. We're gonna have Thanksgiving dinner today, and we're gonna have just everything on the Thanksgiving. We're gonna have the turkey, the stuffing, the red jelly, the cranberry stuff. We're going to have all of it. We're going to have Thanksgiving dinner, and we're not going to wait till November. We're going to celebrate that today. And that's really what the fatted calf, that would have been a big deal. That's not just your Sunday lunch. This would have been a huge meal. So your Thanksgiving, Christmas, or even Easter, I guess. It says, for this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to celebrate. Now, in all reality, this story stands on its own. You could stop with verse 24. And that's not the point of the story. As wonderful as this is, and we love this. We love this idea because all of us are the lost son. We're all the lost son. Okay, we've had moments, whether it is coming back to our family or coming back to God. Everyone, you grow up in church, you grow up in Sunday school, vacation Bible school. Everybody went to college. Your English 101 teacher told you something, and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't believe anymore. And you go through this period of time where you're starting to wonder and doubt. But then you come home, and we all have that. There is a huge idea about reclaiming your faith. I mean, it's very hard for folks. Okay, the faith that I developed when I was a child, 4 or 5 years old, that was just a complete unbroken line up until today. If that happened for you, congratulations. Okay? For most people, it's kind of a straight line till you get to middle school, get to high school, and then you start wondering a little bit. You get married, you get busy, all that. And then there is a point. There's a point sometimes where you have to claim this. I kind of rejected it for a while. I kind of thought it was hokey. I'm glad I don't have to do it anymore. My parents made me go. Now I don't have to go. And then there's a point where you come back and say, no, this is mine. I'm reclaiming this. I'm making this my own. And so we've all been that, and we've all gone through these moments where I used to go to church, but I stopped going, and probably God's mad at me now. I've done too many things. I've done too many bad things. If you know everything I went through and everything I did, you wouldn't want me in your church. I hear that one a lot. Okay, and no, that's just not how that works. That is not how it works. In fact, we have a party for you. Come on over. We're gonna have a big old. Gives me a chance to cook the turkey. But again, this story should have ended in verse 24. It's not. I won't say it's not the point of the story. There's so many points to the story. There's 10 points to the story. Okay. There is the dad, the role of the dad. There's the older son. There's this conversion story. There's the relationship between the two sons. All of it. I mean, there's just multifacets to this. But you get to verse 25. Now his older son was in the fields, and when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, "Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf because he has got him back safe and sound." Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, "Listen, for all these years," and he's angry when he launches into this. He has somebody say, "Listen!" Exclamation point. You are not in a good place. You're cutting. Listen. For all these years, I've been working like a slave for you. I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this, and it's again, pay attention to this. Okay, he does not say my brother. When he says, but when this son of yours, he doesn't even acknowledge them. He doesn't even say he's my brother. When this son of yours comes back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you kill the fatted calf for him. Then the father said to him, "Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours." Now, it's interesting. That is true. That is very true. According to the laws of primogeniture, everything, the son is the older son is basically saying, "You never gave me anything." And the dad's like, "I don't think it's already yours. You already own it. You already own it. I've already given it to you. Okay. You are already the owner of it." And really, it's true. The son's out working. The son really doesn't have to ask his dad for a goat. He could go get his own goat, kind of. So he's very truthful. He's very truthful with this. He says, "But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found." Okay. Now, it does not mean that the younger son's getting all kinds of money back. It does not mean that the youngest son's going to get the inheritance now. No, the money's gone. There's really not. There's still consequences to life. But the younger son's completely put out. He's completely put out over this. Again, he's saying this to the religious folks. This is the rule. Everyone, that rule of primogeniture, as we said a couple of weeks ago, the one who was lost, it's the older son that needs to go out and find him. So when you ask the question, as you read this, okay, the lost sheep, who goes to find the lost sheep? It's the shepherd. It's the lost coin. Who goes to find that? It's the woman who lost the coin. In this story, if you ask anybody, who is the one that needs to go find the son, everybody agrees. It's the older son. It's not the dad. It is not the dad that it's his job to go find him. It is the older son. It is the oldest son. It is his job. It is his job to keep the family together. It is his job to keep the estate together. It would have been his job. And this younger son doesn't go out and do it. Now, as we sort of made the leap, in our sermon a couple of weeks ago, the point is very simple. I mean, God the Father sends the Son to come and find us. What the older son in this text does not do, Jesus does for us. All this imagery of, he puts the robe on his feet and he kills the fatted calf. The only way we get the robe is for Jesus to be disrobed. Okay. When Jesus' robe is removed and he is hanging basically naked on the cross, that's how we get the robe. The only way that we get to join the feast is for Jesus to be on the cross starving, to have these things taken away from him. And so it's a very powerful image to sort of see this sort of put in front of us. Everybody in this story, everybody would have known it is the older son's job. It's the oldest son's job. We read this story, and I've heard many commentators it's the dad. Maybe the dad should have done something. And technically the dad, in our story, the father sends the son. I mean, the father sends Jesus, and that's sort of the point. It would not have been the dad's role. It would have been the son. The son, it is his job to go. And it is true. We have a son, we have an older son who went off into a far country to come and find us. He did not just have to go to Vegas. He came from heaven to earth to redeem us and to find us. And so it is the son's job. And so he's tying all of this. If you go back to the very first two verses of this chapter, now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to him, and the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." It's an amazing thing that all these stories, there is some kind of party. Okay, have you ever been to a party where they didn't have food? No, that's not a party. Okay, it's a party. I've done a number of weddings, obviously, and I've been to a few where the caterer didn't show up at the right time, okay, or like the food's an hour late, and so you've had the wedding, and everybody goes into either the cocktail hour, or they go to something, and they're waiting, and they're looking for something, and you tell 160 people, "Oh, the food's not here yet," and they're getting stoned. They're looking for things on the ground to throw at you. Okay, there is no party without food, and so each of these, and so Jesus is having the party at the very beginning of chapter 15. He's sitting. He is sitting with the lost sheep, the lost coin, and he is the older brother who has gone out to find the younger son, and he's sitting with him. And that's where the older brother's doing the exact same thing. He's doing the exact same thing as what these Pharisees and religious leaders are doing. They're complaining. Why? They went out and did their own thing. We're the good ones. And we listen, we have to realize we are at many times we're the older brother. Okay? And Jesus does it. Jesus in the book of Matthew, there's another parable where very similar to this, where there's a man who owns a field, and he goes out and he hires workers. And he goes out into town, and he hires workers at 6 o'clock in the morning, and he promises them this amount of money. Then he goes out at 9 o'clock, and 12 o'clock, and 3 o'clock, and 5 o'clock. And at the end of the day, he says, "All right, I want you to line up all the workers, and I want you to hire, bring the guys in who were hired last. They all get paid the same." And they're all grumbling. Oh, the guys are being, "Hey, we work longer than these guys." And the landowner's basically like, "Hey, this is my money. I'll do with it whatever." Okay. I could make a very good case for the older brother. Okay, we could all make a good. Listen, I've been going to church since I was born on Saturday, and I was in church on Sunday. My goodness, I've been in this thing my whole life, and all of a sudden you have these folks who are on their deathbed, or they're in prison, or they are, they ones I love. Oh my gosh, the celebrity ones. Oh, the celebrity conversions. Now they were rock stars, and now they have this big conversion thing, or they're country artists, and now they have this big conversion. And like, man, are they really having a conversion, or they just realize, well, they can't sell their original stuff anymore, so now I got to come out with a Christian album, or they'll come out with oh man, that's all. No, that's the older brother. That is the older brother. That is the older brother.
That's hard for me to put that in. Where the older brother comes in, this kind of blowed my. This morning I was reading the last 2 chapters in Luke, and I associated this with this parable. Grace went to the lost.
Yes.
And in the last 2 chapters of Luke, we really want to see the fired up, how Luke or Jesus wants us to get fired up when we rejoice. And that I look at the Father and the people that found their coins and things that are becoming joyful. And I was looking at that in church. We need to be joyful when somebody is saved. So more joyful than a 3-point play or a band concert winner. And we don't have that joy. We don't really feel that joy. Now, sticking the older son in kind of goofs me up. The older son in our theory or thought of how that works in the church family. Where's the church family fit with the older son?
I would say the older son shows up in a number of ways. So, I would say the easiest way it would show up is if you had somebody come to church and they're not dressed churchy, they look a little rough, or you know them. Like here in our town, you kind of know everybody. So and so shows up, you're like, what are they doing here? Okay, that's very the funniest one is if you have somebody who's never been to your church before and they come and they sit in your seat. Okay, no worse things than to have someone, the chosen chair, and I have heard stories. Okay, some of you could probably vouch for this. And these are years ago. This is nothing current, but I've heard stories of certain individuals who went up to this said person and said, "Excuse me, you're in my seat." Okay, that is older brother. That is older brother. That is the older brother. If you come in and we have this big youth thing and there's teenagers everywhere and there's loud music, there's popcorn on the floor and they're all running through the thing and like, what are we doing? All these children running around our building and no one pays attention. Like, wait a minute, what did you do to get 30 children in this building to run around? We're worried about, oh my gosh, there's popcorn on the floor and one of the pictures is crooked and, who did this? Who gave them a dodgeball? That's older brother, all of that. We think when we think this is our house. Now, I want you to feel comfortable like this is your house. This is your house. But if it's my house, like it's my club, and you're not invited to the club, or you don't know the password, or you don't know how the words go, or whatever, that's older brother. We like it. We like it a certain way. These folks coming in, they don't know, they don't respect it, whatever. That's older brother.
That's older brother. Why he doesn't realize this.
Why the older brother doesn't realize it?
Yeah.
It's.
Don't you think that some of this goes back to we all have our sense, excuse me, of fairness?
Oh, sure.
And I can imagine the Pharisees when he's saying, especially in those first 2, where he's saying there's more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner rather than the 99. And they're sitting there, you're thinking, hey, I did everything right. I'm following the law. I'm doing this. And why are they celebrating? It's kind of like St. Augustine comes to my mind. He lived that wild life and then had that repentance. And when I was younger, I used to think, you'd look at me and say, well, I can go out and do whatever I want as long
Right.
as I get in under the wire.
Right. Right.
And so, I mean, I can see where people, you know, if you do everything right and you don't cheat on your taxes and you don't do this and you're kind to people and you do all this stuff, and then somebody else comes along who's been an absolute horrible, you know, unkind, nasty people, and then they have a turnaround. There's sometimes it's I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, I know what we should do,
Right.
and I've done a lot of what I should have done in life and did exactly what I shouldn't have done.
Right. I would say this. I would say a few things. One, we have the conception. So, all right, I'm just going to make this up. Some rock star who just was a rock star, lived rock star life, you know, had a different girl in every city. Okay, drugs, everything, just partied. You know, just picture really anybody from the 80s. You know, just 80s rock star. They've just gone and they've done it. And then later in life, now they're in their 50s, 60s, and they come out and they say, I have found the Lord. And we all kind of look at that like, really?
Hallelujah.
Yeah. Hallelujah. We should say hallelujah. Okay? And here's the reality, though, too, is that we don't perceive, like I didn't do a whole lot of crazy stuff as a teenager. Okay? I did not. I was involved in church all through high school. I had a calling experience when I was 15. And so early on, I got tagged with a very cool name in high school. I was Rev Dave. Okay? Now, Rev Dave does not get invited to parties, and the cool girls don't talk to Rev Dave. Okay? That is not, oh my gosh, that guy doesn't, you know. Now, and I thought, man, I don't get invited to any of that stuff. I don't get invited to any of that stuff. I don't go to any of these wild parties. I don't get any of this. And now, one story is I did have right before I graduated, the captain of the football team and captain of the wrestling team came to Christ. I was able to lead him to Christ, and he was notorious. I mean, he was just a dude that, big guy, heavyweight guy, but his dad owned the local bar in town, would come into school talking about all these bar fights that were going on, and he was just roughneck dude. I led that guy to the Lord. He actually, he died about 10 years ago, so I'll never forget that. And I always used to look at those stories and think, you know what, man, that'd be cool if I was in like bar fights every night. And then I look back like, no, that's not cool. There's nothing cool about that. There's nothing cool. And I look like at the rock star story. If I just lived that crazy life and slept with a bunch of people and just did drugs and drinking, there's going to be mileage that goes on that body after a while. Does that now mean because I came to know Christ, now I get to live for 100 years? No. Everything you did in those 20s and 30s, that stuff's going to catch up to you. That is going to catch up to you. There's a penalty for all of that. There's a penalty for all that. That God's grace allows us to be a part of his kingdom, but yeah, you know, if I smoke for 40 years, there's not a whole lot that's going to come back and say, well, okay, well, now you come to Jesus, we're just going to take your lungs and we're just going to, like, no, that's still just going to be the case. These are the choices that you made. You know, I get married, you see these stories of people get married 4 and 5 times, okay? And they have children to this person and children to this person, children to this person. And you look at that, you're like, oh my gosh, that's, you know, they got to be in all these marriages. Like, who wants that? Who wants that story? Who wants to have all those divorces and all those stepchildren? You know, I lived such a crazy life. I got fired from every job I was at. I'd work there for a couple weeks and I'd get fired. Okay. Again, there's a penalty that comes with that. It's not anything about God's grace. It is like, and God, listen, I still love you. You can still come in. And again, the son doesn't get everything back. The dad does not sit down and say, hey, I'm going to write you a check for all the, here's new money for you. No. That his part of the inheritance is gone. It was not like, oh, my 401k has been building while you've been. No, the inheritance was kind of cut. Once that part is cut, it's gone. But the other reality for the older son is very interesting. Like, we don't realize all the good things that we have already been blessed with. We look at the rock star life and, oh man, that'd be awesome. No, it wouldn't. And so the rock star comes, and I go, what do you mean you letting him in? What do you? And he got to do all that. He got to do all that cool stuff. And there's a real like David, I saved you from that cool stuff you think is cool. And get your head around the idea that stuff you're not carrying all that. You're not carrying all that with you. You're not carrying all that past story. I saved you from it. I kept you from that. If you want a goat, go get your goat. It's right there, because guess what? I've already given it to you. Go get your goat. Go have a party. Invite your friends over. Okay? We have to make sure, like, hey, what is it that did we really miss out on? Okay? It's a really weird idea to think, you know what? I've been married to the same person for 50 years. That's awesome. That is completely awesome. That is completely awesome. Okay? And if the culture says, oh my gosh, you've been with the same person? You've been dedicated to the same person for 50 years? You don't realize the life you could have had. Like, no, I know what the life I could have had. I got to be with this person for a very long time. I did not have, you look at Hollywood weddings. Like, I watched some of the Oscars. And if anybody watched the Will Smith thing, that's insane. That whole Will Smith thing. You look at, the shelf life on a Hollywood marriage is like 3.5 years. Okay, that is the typical, we're big Hollywood stars. We found each other on the set of this movie. We got married. And now 4 years, 5 years. And they all go through this whole thing. And you're just like, that's not cool. And you wonder why the children, you always look at these children of these families, and they're all a mess. Why are they all in rehab? Why are they all in therapy? Why are they all going through, well, we're stars, and we got to live this life, and I got to be married to this person. I got to be married to this person. But then I had an affair with this person, and then we got to, there's payment for that. And they can all come to Jesus tomorrow. They can all come to Jesus, and they would be welcome in, and we're going to have a party for them. And there's still a residual that you still have to do with that. And a lot of times we spend a lot of our lives sort of, once we've come to Christ, it's that grace that allows us in, but it's also God's grace that sort of walks us through. It says, how do you unwind that thing you built for all this time? Okay, you still have to go back. Okay, I come to Christ, and I got to go back and fix things with everybody that I didn't like, or everybody I got mad at, or everything that didn't go well. I still have to go through and do that. But you have to understand, what Jesus is saying, hey, this is a way that I want you to live, and I want you to think this is good. We go through all these parables, and when we first read these parables, oh my goodness, who does this? This is the way I want you to live. This is what I want you to. This is the way I want you to live. This is what I want you to celebrate. This is what I want you to pursue. This is the goal. And so, as we're going through this process, this is what are we going to celebrate? How do we make choices? What does it mean to follow Jesus? That's how our thinking transforms. Don't be the older son. Don't stay in that. There's plenty of those. The Pharisees throughout this whole thing. It's not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair. This isn't fair. Okay. We had powers being taken away from us. We had authority that's being questioned. We had people that came to us because they needed us. Now they realize they don't need us, and they're feeling disenfranchised because their whole thing is sort of falling apart. No, it's not. That's not how this works. That's not how this works. So,
I see the joy, more than anything, the joy in bringing the lost into the fold.
Mm-hmm. And that should be our joy. Yes.
That's why I kind of miss the son part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I see the joy on all. Actually, there's five parables, and the end of chapter 14.
Mm-hmm.
There's two other little ones that are important. But all of those, the lost is found, and when you find it, the joy.
Absolutely.
And then that's why this Sunday everybody in the church is going to say hallelujah to your sermon.
I hope.
Laugh for me.
I hope. So, all right. Oh my goodness, it's 11:20. So, all right. Reach for the virtual hand of the person next to you. Go ahead. May the Lord watch over me while we're absent one from the other. Amen. Very good.